Hey, Go Be Society. Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking about something that already I feel has resonated with so many of you because you have all already commented. And so tonight we are going to be talking about something that is near and dear to all of our hearts. The concept, the last of the friendship February excitement, which is talking about teens. And I know that that isn't the easiest thing for so many of us because when our children are younger, it seems that we can talk about it more when issues come up, but it seems really very much because teens are so into their privacy that oftentimes parents feel like that they're completely alone because they really don't have the opportunity to be talking about the serious issues that come up with their teenagers. And it's very hard because the more that we're able to do this together, the easier it becomes. We can feel bonded. We can feel like really we're all in this together. But when that doesn't happen, then we feel very much alone and we're left with questions. And so tonight, I really want to be able to focus on this concept that I keep hearing about, which is we very often speak about teenage years in a way that is so foreign to us. And I really want to be able to help us connect with our teenagers and create that friendship, or at least somewhat back of a bond that we're missing with our teenagers. So what is this concept that we have been talking about, which is like eggshells? We're all walking on eggshells. And I know that this concept of eggshells really resonates because a lot of what you guys gave me in terms of the feedback was really about, oh, I've been walking on eggshells with my teenager. I'm walking on eggshells with my teenager. I can't seem to get it right. Why is it that if I do X, Y, or Z, I still get the door kind of like slammed in my face, or I just feel like the rolling of the eyes just hasn't stopped? So let's talk about that. To talk about it, there's a really nice analogy that I think would be helpful to start with, and that is picture yourself in a swimming pool, okay? And the swimming pool has a swimmer, it has the water, and then it has the pool. And essentially, your teenager is the swimmer, and the water is really the world that your teenager is having to swim through and navigate. And what are you? You are the walls of the pool. And so oftentimes what's going to happen is your child is going to be swimming. And when your child is swimming, then you're just kind of like, a wall in the pool. But what ultimately happens is something goes wrong. Either that your child is tired, or your child has something that is causing them to kind of drop down, or something is going on. And so what do? They go back to the wall and they hold on for dear life, and they have to either take a pause or a breather, or just kind of think about how they're going to go back into the water and what they're going to do. And ultimately what happens is they push off the wall, oftentimes in a shove or in a kick or really harshly, and they propel themselves back into the water. And so you've been hurt and you've been shoved and pushed and really made to feel horrible, but yet you're the fundamental basis that allows your child, your teenager, to go back into the water and swim until she comes back and wants to do this all over again. And there are plenty of parents who say, forget it, I'm not doing this. Like, if she's not going to engage with me in a way that makes me feel good or makes me feel appreciated, then I'm just going to shut myself off and do nothing. Like, I am not playing this game. It is not for me. And if that's the case, all the power to you, but essentially you're really missing out on so many happy memories, times and opportunities and connection that you could be having with your child. And you're also overlooking that your child needs that, needs a safe base, some place to be able to push off. And if not for that, like then what? Where else is he or she going to be able to feel the unconditional love or the base or the support as they navigate and they go back into the water? And so tonight, really, we have to appreciate that you are so essential in your child being able to navigate the world. And yes, fundamentally, what's built into the system is this very uncomfortable shove and push. And we want to change that. We want it to go in a different direction, obviously. But if it isn't going to, and you're going to get the brunt of it, then please just try to remember this metaphor to bring yourself and your husband, or, just put everything into a different perspective that could allow you to really appreciate that you are so essential in your teen, in your child's development. And your child is going to have to navigate the waters. And some of those waters are going to be waters, puberty waters and friend waters. I was just remarking with a couple of people that if you gave me the opportunity to become a teenager again, I would not take it. I would not want to go back to those years for anything. Not that I didn't enjoy myself, but oh my gosh, the drama, the angst. And I didn't even have to deal with social media. I didn't even have to deal with, any electronic device at all. And so, on some level, it really is a very tumultuous, and, the waters are not, they're certainly not calm waters. So, but we are not punching bags. We weren't made that way, and we certainly don't want to feel that way. So let's just put that in perspective as we take on some of these eggshell concepts that have been mentioned. And what are one of the eggshell concepts that, just to recap, we're talking about being made to feel shunned or left, or that your opinions don't matter. There's nothing that you do that is right. There's nothing that you do that is wrong. It's just everything is drama, and just this uncomfortable feeling from the moment your child wakes up and hopefully in their bed to the moment they come home to it's an ongoing drama. And it wasn't always like that, because perhaps when they were younger they weren't, or the extent to which the blow-ups and the discomfort and sometimes the mean shove, it's just a lot. So if we have, eggshells in that regard, then I was thinking of what eggshells could mean in terms of how we could get our teenage experience in a more friendly experience. So let's just start. E is expert. And what do I mean by that? So, okay, there are lots of issues that your child is facing. Let's just take, for example, their skin, right? Or their body changes. So you might think, okay, I'm trying to be an expert. I'm trying to tell them what to do. And, I'm trying to tell them to wash their face and take care of their personal hygiene. And I'm trying to be that person that's giving them advice. But teenagers don't often want that level of advice. Many of you actually, when I asked, how do you feel about taking in advice? Some of you responded, well, if I don't ask for it, I don't want it. So there are a lot of teenagers who are not asking for your advice. So the fact that you're an expert is not appealing to them by any means. You're not winning any brownie points. But I know that many of you are like, yeah, but I want them to know the information. I want them to feel that there are adults that they could trust. And the truth is, it is very important for them to have adults that they can trust. It is certainly helpful when they're hearing all of these other opinions from their friends and from, I would say, unreliable sources, for you to be able to, give them reliable sources. Like that to me is essential. So what do you do with that? Like, how do you give them advice without being this expert? And I'll tell you, an expert is a lonely position at the top of a mountain, and that is certainly not a way to connect with your child. So how about if we explore the concept of expert without you being that expert? And what do I mean by that? So there are definitely people that you want them to listen to. So for example, if you were to put down on their bed a book about, a topic that would be relevant, such as, I don't know, body changes, let's just say, a cute book that perhaps gives more of an explanation than you could possibly do because they don't want to listen to you, then if you put it on their bed with a little note that said, I thought, I came across this book I thought you might enjoy, okay? Or if you know that your child has issues with their skin, let's just say, instead of you being the resident expert telling your child what to do and then facing the brunt of the rolling of the eyes, then making an appointment with the dermatologist and having the dermatologist give over that information would be helpful. Similarly, a pediatrician. Similarly, the advice of a coach. If they're taking tennis lessons, if whatever it is, you don't have to be the resident expert. What you could be is the facilitator to the expert, and by doing that, what we allow for is that you're getting the message across. You're allowing your child to have expertise in the form of some important people that know what they're talking about, but it doesn't have to be you. And I think that when it's not you, and if you open up the opportunity and you facilitate that your child will have the opportunity to learn from some important people who have advice and resource, or in the form of a book, which there are a lot of books. I'm oftentimes asked by my patients, can you just give me a book on, whatever? And there are plenty of really well-written books, some for kids, some for, and some for parents. And I think that it's helpful. Sometimes kids just want to do it on their own in their privacy. And, I have patients who come in and I know that they've made notes on certain books. I think that that's really helpful. You don't have to be the expert. And the truth is, like I said, you're going to be shoved and pushed. So better that they get the information and that they have to have that talking it out with somebody else, not you. Okay, so that's the E. Now the G. The G is genuine listening. What do I mean by that? So oftentimes there are windows of opportunity when your child is actually telling you something. And if you take that opportunity and you do one of three things, either A, you judge them, B, you give them advice, or C, you probe and you ask too much, then you're losing out on an opportunity for them to actually talk to you. So again, it kind of stems from, you're not the expert. Do not give them advice if they're not asking for it. But rather, it would be great just to open up the communication with them and allow them to just talk. And you can ask them if they want your advice, but don't ask too many questions, or they know, hidden agenda, my mother is asking me too much, meaning she wants to know information, which she will use against me at some eventual time. At some time, she will say something like, yeah, but I know this is what you and your friends are really doing, and this is what's on your mind, so, you are definitely not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. It is really important that if you're going to do listening, then you're actually going to listen. And let's just use an example. I'm thinking about an example that one of you actually asked and gave me as a question before the live started. So what happens if my child asks for the car, okay, and I get all upset and I say, no way, like you're not having the car. So can you talk me through a dialogue that would really be helpful so that I understand what you're talking about? Okay. So let's talk about this. And I don't know if this resonates, if this is something that your children have experienced, and you've experienced with your children. So your child asks you to take the car and you say, sorry, you can't have the car. And your child has a really large expression and is like, what? That is so unfair. Why? Every one of my friends is able to take the car. How can it be that, that I can't take the car? So here's your moment. Okay, if you're going to do genuine listening in this moment, and this is not so easy. So the first of all, I think it is important to recognize with them, like, wow, you're really upset about my answer. Like, this is really, really hard for you. I can't talk to you about it right now because you're clearly upset, and I can't. But as soon as you calm down, I'd really like to understand why this no is so. It's a really like important no to you. Now, I'm saying this, and you're like, yeah. How could you actually say it? No? I'm not judging. I'm probing just to the degree that I kind of want to understand a little bit more. Okay, but let's continue with this, okay? So let's say your child then calms down, takes a deep breath, probably in a fake way, because they're like, okay, if you're not going to talk to me in any way, okay, so, and your child says to you, okay, so, Mom, I really want to take the car because, I feel like it's something that really helps me with my friends, and each one of my friends gets a turn to take, their car. And with me, I'm always the one that can't do it, and it makes me feel bad. And so it really is troublesome to me that I can't take the car. So, and then you say, okay, so now I understand where you're coming from. So really what you're saying is that it's like, to help you with your friends. And I understand that. I still can't let you take the car tonight because truthfully, I feel like, a lot of what you've been doing in your room with your friends, and I know how much you want to be with your friends, but you haven't come to one meal in a while. And I feel like it's only about your friends. And so if I'm working towards helping you with your friends, then I feel like in many ways I'm working against, you participating in the family. But I guess if you can think of a way that you can still be participating in the family more than you've been doing, then I totally hear what you're saying and we can work that out. So come back to me with a plan, and I totally hear what you're saying, right? So what's just happened? So did I let my child then take the car tonight? No, I didn't. Did I absolutely hear what my child had to say? Yeah. Was this a situation where I actually got some information and got a little bit more of an insight as to what's going on in my child's life? You betcha I did. And why? Why that happened was because I did genuine listening. I really heard what my child was saying, and I did something really important. When you genuinely listen, you need to mirror what your child or what anyone is saying. And this doesn't just go for your children, but this goes for all listening that you have to do. Mirroring means that I heard what was said and then I say it back, not echoing because that's annoying, but rather I say it back in such a way that really allows for kind of a recap, like, oh, so basically what you're saying is, which proves to the other person that I heard them. I got the whole entirety of the message. Like, I'm really clear on what they were saying. And because of that, I can respond and they can feel heard. And I could just tell you, and you know this from every time that I speak, positivity connects. And so if you've been heard and your child understands that, wow, my mom heard me, then really it's going to connect and it's going to lead to the next time. And hopefully, eventually, those next times are not going to be in anger. But even if they are, it really allows for you to hear what's been said and build on that. And so it's not going to be just about like, oh, my child never talks to me. But yeah, your child does talk to you. And unfortunately for us as parents of children, of teenagers, a lot of the talk is going to be through an argument process. And as we'll get to later, like, that's okay. Now is the time for the argument process to be relevant in your child's life. Like, there's so much drama anyway. And a lot of emotional growth happens from arguments. But in this way, like, yes, so your child did share with you and there was a message that got through, and thankfully, you didn't miss out on it because you actually mirrored and spoke it and talked it through. So E-G, okay, so G is genuine listening. The next one is G, the next G, and that's giving. And I've said this before, and I will continue to say that giving forcing your child, not forcing, but facilitating that your child is involved in giving in any sort of way is really important. A couple of you asked me questions like, my child doesn't seem to be connected to anything, not religion, not me, just seems to be very dulled. And that is definitely something that we have to keep in mind and watch out for, because you never want to overlook, signs of depression or anxiety or, just things that are going on underneath the surface that are really just not allowing your child to be able to grow and be and have any emotional connection. But let's just say that they're just, not at that level, that clinical level of significance, but rather they're just kind of dulled. There really is something special, a dynamic that happens when you give instead of just being all about you. And that could be in the form of any sort of organization. It certainly doesn't have to be in the form of, okay, so now you're going to give to me by helping me out in our home life. No. That's not the type of giving that I'm talking about. That's when positivity connects. And after they've been giving for a while, to an organization or to something that is meaningful or relevant to your family, then they are going to, hopefully their heart will start to open and allow for other giving to happen. I have the initiative that I work with, and that is Bowie Challah, where we give challahs on a weekly basis to people that have suffered a loss and are in mourning for the year. But what's interesting is that I've had parents call me and ask me, please, can my teenager be involved in any sort of way? Like, I really think this would be helpful. And I've had teenagers that, that were not really into and are still not that into, connecting to other people. But this is the kind of thing where it's just, it's helping. And there really is minimal communication. And there doesn't have to be, so I have some teenagers that are delivering. And the truth is, it makes you feel good. When you give, you feel good. The giver gets so much more, I find, than the recipient. And what it also does, kind of getting back to what we said about expertise. So there are many, many organizations that have some amazing older kid role models and older people that are involved. And just to have your child be among that experience is really helpful. And, oftentimes teenagers, they've forgotten how to talk because of all the social media and all of, the texting and the Snapchatting and all of that. And so it is nice that in a lot of these initiative organizational stuff, you don't have to talk. You just have to act. You just have to do, like your packaging or the talking that you're doing is with someone that is completely needy and not at all like the kind of talking that you're used to. And if your child is into music, then there is always an opportunity for music to be that thing that is given as a charitable experience. If your child is strong, boxes being lifted and moved. If your child is creative, there's so much that's happening. And I do believe that if there is some level of just not being able to connect to anything, not to you, not to religion, then start off by allowing them to connect to their own internal experience through giving. And again, this is the kind of thing where you could be hands off. It's kind of like, you put them into the water and you let them swim, because they will, have to navigate it with the person who's in charge and their own feeling about it and be able to give a little bit or a lot, stands off. It really is a nice thing to do. So I know in today's day and age with what's happening because of COVID, there are less opportunities, but they're not no opportunities. And, and that's something that, either you can think of or creatively, or you can think of, asking, they're usually school representative types of people that are involved with, with charitable, all this charitable stuff. So I do think that is something that is helpful to everyone, but teenagers especially. And they do have this, a lot of energy to be using. Okay, so that is That is the G, and this, and that answer really goes to a couple of you that were talking about kind of having your child not being attached to anything. Okay, the next is the S, and that is sleep. And again, many of you have heard this before. It's interesting. My patient actually told me that in one of the magazines that she was reading on teenagers, they spoke about the idea that teenagers have like something physical that's going on inside of them that doesn't allow them to sleep or to go to sleep as early as they might want. That their serotonin that would allow them to go into sleep is kind of delayed in being released. And so like there's a real physical reason why they can't fall asleep on time. And also like once they're involved with something, it is just so hard to shut it off. And I get a lot of times from my patients that it's just so hard. They can't go to sleep when that is when all the group chatting and and all the Snapchatting and all that stuff is going on. Like they have FOMO. They really don't want to go to sleep then when they know like what that means. What that means is that they're going to come into school the next day and be behind everybody else because they don't know what was discussed. So I hear all of that. The flip side of that is really that sleep creates irritation and pimples and attentional issues and just it's just a never-ending cycle of not great stuff. So we do have to balance it out. It is definitely a shame if a child is feeling like they have to stay up for whatever reason, but that too, kind of reflecting with them on, again, not telling them what to do, because don't do that, and we'll get to that. But it's definitely something like to consider in terms of, suggesting about, what their time management is and what, where they're going to showcase themselves the best and how that's going to really look long-term. But sleep is definitely something that would be an amazing thing for your relationship with your child, if that got regulated or just identified, experienced, understood, and not with blame, because like my patient brought out, like there's a physical element to why my child is or my teenagers are not tired when everybody else is. Okay, H is help, and what do I mean by that? Help on the friend issue. So help on any of the issues that your child is experiencing. So a little bit goes a long way. It's interesting. It reminds me of a patient that I have who is probably smarter than I am if I really had to, analyze it. And we have these sessions where I do know what it's like to, be walking through a minefield, because if I say the wrong adjective, if it is extreme or exaggerated in any way, she will bring it back to me and give it to me like no one's business. Oh, so what you mean is, so why are you saying that? Like really? So every word matters. And so my words are generally very brief and very succinct and telegraphic, I think we call it, because I don't want to put in too much information lest it lead to a long-winded disagreement and, where I have to convince her that wasn't what I meant. And it becomes really, really annoying. So similarly, I do believe that it is very important for us to make sure that we only get to like small words and that our phrases are just no judgment, just a concern. And one of the areas that I think are really relevant in terms of this concern is the friendship area. I have so many patients that are navigating the transition of being in high school. So much so that fast forward in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be giving a seminar or some really good stuff with regard to this, because the transition of going from something that you're used to something that you're not used to. So if it's 8th grade to 9th grade, or going to sleepaway camp for the first time, or going over to college for this first time, or even getting married or starting to date, there's always this, going from what you're used to what you're not used to. And, a lot of my 9th graders are really struggling with the concept of finding their footing friendship-wise. And a couple of the things that we've spoken of is, well, there's this one concept that you have to really be true to how you are as a person. So if, for example, you're the kind of person that, can really roll with the punches, and things are, you can just, brush them off. And so if you get a mean comment, being given off towards you, you can just be like, yeah, whatever, that person was just in a bad mood, or it didn't really matter so much. Then that's one type of person. But let's say you're not, and you don't have what I call a good heart shield, that a lot of the things can penetrate in. You have to really know that about yourself before going into any of these friendship opportunities, because there are some friends that are what I call roller coaster friends. And they are so much fun, and they are so exciting, and they're all about the fun. But there are the highs and there are the lows. And if you can't handle going along for the ride, do not go on a roller coaster. There are those friends, and there are those friend opportunities that are more like a merry-go-round. Those friends that are just not as exciting. But you know what they are? They're very stable, and they're pretty, and they're very wholesome, and you can go along around and around and around, and you don't get nauseous. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. And parents, it's really nice to be able not to, tell them about the nitty gritties of what's going on in their life, and who's the friend. Oh, and that friend is dressed that way, and I don't think that friend is good for you. But really, it's more about reflecting, okay, so, I guess, you're choosing to go on the roller coaster. And when I was younger, I also did for a while. I thought it was fun to, to do that roller coaster. But wow, those dips are really major. And, and really, not only are those dips major, by the way, for the family, for the child, but let's take what they're like for the family. So when you're buying into that roller coaster ride, just know you're also irritable and, seemingly on edge, and things are not going as easy. So it's whoa. Just know exactly what ride you're getting on. And that isn't, again, telling them, okay, so I'm the expert and I don't like your friends and I don't think this would be good. No, this is more okay, I just want to reflect with you on what you're choosing. And I just hope that, that you have the stomach for it. And some questions that again, when we have the floor with our kids to ask our teenagers, it's not I think that some of the questions are more, so, do you get compliments from your friends? Are you giving compliments? What are those are you really happy for those people that you're hanging out with? Are you happy for their accomplishments? Are they happy for your accomplishments? On what level are we having this, what's the value of the roller coaster? Are these people, that your child can really feel good about themselves with and feel good about the friendship with? And that's where I like the concept of the roller coaster versus a merry-go-round. I think it's just something that they can reflect with, they can take with them and maybe think about. But it really is hard, and transitions are so difficult. But if our child is feeling like they're being judged, then again, we're not being the walls of the pool. We're being another reason that, that they get weighed down. And it's hard. It really is hard. I don't know about you, but I would not take that time machine and go back to being a teenager. Oh, no. Okay, so that is another question in terms of what someone had asked, what can I have my child think about to see things more clearly? And I think that metaphor is something just to consider. Okay. The next E is emotional lesson. And this is something that I alluded to before. So like, what is it in the fighting that I have with my child that is helpful? So there really is a lot of benefit to being able to fight with your child. And what I mean by that, it's not very easy. And like I said, we don't always have the stomach for it. But essentially what happens in a fight? So what happens is, let's take, for example, a prime example of someone that had written in. So how do I get my child to set the table when the conversation usually goes like this? Please go set the table. I'll do it in a little while, Mom. Please go set the table. Mom, I said I'm going to do it in a little while. Go set the table now. You are so lazy. I do everything for you and you're still not setting the table. I'm not going to set your table. What am I, your slave? I don't even want to eat anything with you guys. And up and slam and done. So where do we go with that conversation? Like, how do we do things differently? So essentially, let's go back and let's think about what just happened and where we could get some emotional growing for ourselves and for our child, right? So like what I had said was, it's really helpful that we fight with our children sometimes. Okay, so where? Okay, so first of all, after I pause and reflect and breathe and think for a second, like, so what are the key elements that are really important in this experience? And I think that the first is, if I were to go back up to my child and say, you know what, I just want, I see that things didn't go so well. And for my part, I called you lazy and that just was uncalled for. And I was upset at the time because when I'm upset, I say those kind of things. I still want you to set the table, but it wasn't nice that I said that. And, I want to hear from you, like, what was going on for you that you needed those extra moments. Well, I was in the middle of doing something that's really important to me. I was talking to my friends. And so having that conversation where I hear you. And again, for my part, I apologize for what I did, but this is something that, that we need to work out well here. So I would really like it if you set the table, and it sounds to me like you would really like that you're able to, talk to your friends and do whatever it is that you want with your friends. So that's really fine. And because of that, I respect that enough to say that perhaps at this point, it would be more helpful. Well, let's work it out. Like, you want time with your friends. How about if you take that at the end of the meal instead of at the beginning of the meal? Like, maybe we can even cut the meal a little bit shorter. But certainly everybody's hungry, so we're not gonna shave off the time in the beginning. But rather we could do it at the end. Any conversation that you can have with them that takes into consideration two things. So number one is that there's an emotional experience that happens when you're angry, and that is like the worst of you comes out. So that's number one. Number two, the healthiest thing that you could do is apologize and then like work on a repair. That's what I call the OAR of an apology. You own what you did, you apologize, you say the words, and then you think of a repair. All those things are really helpful for your child. If your child understands, like, okay, so calm is better, working out, our differences, never in a shameful way, and clearly, like, I have differences with another person, but I have to work it out. That's a life skill. That's really important. And it's not just with what she's going to do with you, but how's she going to deal with a boss or anybody else in her life that, that irks her or asks her to do something that she's not in the mood for to do. So I do believe that if she can work it out with you, resolve things in a healthy kind of way, then really you're helping her emotionally grow from the experience. And you can't emotionally grow unless you actually go through the experience, because it's, you can't talk about, oh, well, there would be something to be said if we were to argue. Like, no, I think the best way to handle things is really to actually live through them. In that way, you can put your money where your mouth is and really work it through. And I do believe that it goes a long way in your relationship teens are of the age where they start to see that we could be, we can also be wrong. We could be hypocritical. We could be, say one thing and do something else. When a child is much younger, we're infallible. Like, that's it. They don't even think about that. It's so concrete. It's like, okay, if it's my parents, and of course they're right, or they're the authority. And how can an authority also be wrong or make a mistake? But teenagers can certainly see through, and I think it's a really healthy way to model for them to be able to apologize, work it through, and understand there's going to be a difference of opinion. Things are not always going to go exactly as you want them to. We have to work it out, and I think that that's really healthy. Now that leads to L, which is line. And what do I mean by that? So in all of my conversations with you and in talking about teenage, there has never been a more important concept, which is there are 3 F's that are really important with regard to our teenagers. And that is fair, friendly, and firm. And what do I mean by that? So friendly is what I was saying before. There is never, ever a good reason to shame your child. There is never a good reason to insult or make them feel less than by your words. That's just unhealthy. It's uncalled for. It's not necessary. Your point is going to be made, and sometimes it's going to be one that is going to be made, more directly than others. But there's never a good time to shame, because that just really does the opposite of what we're doing. We're trying to empower them to grow and to have a relationship, and that certainly doesn't happen from shaming them. When those words slip out, because we're all human, I'm sorry, and it was in my moments of upset. It's fine. We're all human. That's totally okay. But what about the firm? So firm is that it is really important that you do call your child out on things that you're not happy with. And it's really important that it happens sometimes on the small things, not all things, but on the small things. So if rolling their eyes sometimes bothers you, you could say something to like, okay, and until you stop, that presentation, I'm not gonna be able to talk to you. Or ouch, that was really unfriendly. When you decide that you want to become friendly to me, then, I will definitely want to serve you, your food. It's okay to be firm. It's okay to say, to set a limit on the phone, and that, that the phone goes off at a certain hour. It's interesting. I have this patient, and this is not the first time, but just recently, she was telling me that she very much hates the fact that her phone goes off, or all of her Wi-Fi or whatever it is goes off at 11 o'clock. And she very much knows that she's going to get in trouble, but she continues to work it out or wire it up, because I'm so technological, so I don't even know how she would do this, but she can get it to go back on. And her parents, knowing that this is going to happen, every couple of days, figure out that she's done it. And they get her, they call her down and they say, you know what, now you're not going to be able to have your phone. And you're not going to be able to have your phone for whatever, another week. And she told me, she weighs it out and she knows, that's it. I don't care. So I said to her, well, wait a second. Have you discussed this with them? Why don't you have a conversation about, you literally know that you're walking into a punishment and this whole thing, and you haven't had a discussion? No, they're going to be mad at me for even, thinking about it. So we worked it out that they're going to have a discussion about it. And what happened? So she said to them, you know what, I'm really, my friends are all talking to each other, and it is so important to me that I come into school, on the know-how and knowing what's going on. And you can't turn it off at 11 when my friends are literally talking to each other until 1 a.m. every morning. So this, I don't care. I can't live with this. But we had discussed how she was going to say it, and she said it in a very calm way that her parents understood in earnest. Now, they didn't then say, Okay, so good news, like forget it. We're taking off all limits on your phone. Good news, like we really heard you. So no, they didn't do that. They are staying firm, and they said to her, well, listen, you know, what we feel very comfortable with is that you do not have good time management skills at all hours of the day. And so when we're asking you to do X, Y, and Z, there's always in a few minutes and like we're asking you to do, and we think about like, that you're going to be getting to your homework. It seems to only start at whatever the time is. And so if you could show us that you're putting in time management in a healthy way, then we will 100% believe in you and then allow you to have, your phone for a longer amount of time. And we'll start it off slow. So if you can do X, Y, and Z, and show us that you're doing that in a timely fashion, then we will feel comfortable to extend it to midnight. And that bar is number one, that you can get up in the morning, but she happens to be an early riser, so that's not even a consideration. But, it was really more about the idea that they want to be firm to their belief. And their belief really is like, if you're going to manage your time during the day, then you'll be able to manage your time at night. And if you're not going to manage your time during the day, then don't ask us about managing your time at night. So yeah, there was a level of firm. Now, in advance, I should just backtrack and say the first time that they had this blowout where she was like, it's not fair. What happened? They said, you are so ungrateful. You ungrateful little girl. We bought you the best phone. How dare you speak to us about a curfew? Of course we're allowed to put a phone curfew on your phone, right? Now, that was not friendly. That was not friendly at all. You ungrateful little girl is certainly demeaning. And so that also needed to get recognized. In the follow-up conversation, what was allowed, the relationship got built on the fact that we're not going to call each other mean words. That's not okay. And we're going to stay firm. However, and this is a really important however, we're going to be fair. And so if we're going to, that's the third, the fairness. If we're going to be asking for time management and you're giving it to us, then we will be fair enough to be flexible and allow for you to be able to get what you want, because ultimately that's what builds a relationship. And, the flex chart that I have actually, and, some were giving me some feedback, like I could really do this with my teenager. Yeah, you can. You just have to make sure that the flexibility is in something that's more teen relevant. So if you're going to be flexible about the timing of the whatever the curfew or whatever it might be, making sure that your child is being flexible, but so are you. That at least every couple of times that your child is like doing what they have to do, you take whatever rule, regulation, this decision that you have for your family and just kind of also allow for flexibility, because that builds a relationship. And I think that teenagers, especially teenagers, they look to that and they appreciate that and they like that. They want that. They really want to be heard, and not just in the form of like, yeah, but rather like, oh, okay, so I got it. I hear what you really want, and if that's what you really want, and I can also get what I really want, then we can ride off into the sunset and be happy. Okay, so that is the L. Now, there are a lot of, right, so the last one that, the next L is, and this is something that, again, reflecting on some of the questions that I've been asked, is how can we learn? Right? So how do I learn from my teenager? So again, when you're open to learning, you will. I was recently with a bunch of teenagers, and they were talking to us adults about just the words, like these new phrases that are being used, like to cap and all of these like really funny expressions that I had never heard of, and like I started to feel way older than I am. But essentially, between their culture and the music and everything that's going on, like it really is okay not to know and to learn to know that you don't know, and just, just the experience. Now, part of the learning is the other L, which is listening. Like, how in the world do we learn if we're not actually showing our kids, our teenagers, that we are listening to what they have to say? So, and there are a lot of different types of listening. So here are the ones that you should not be doing. So the first is, you should not be spacing out. Do not look over somewhere else and like clearly no sleeping, no on your phone. Do not space out. Like, they're never going to be trusting that you're listening to them again. Okay. The next is, don't pretend to listen, right? Like, But really, like, if you're not mirroring and you have no idea what they're actually saying, like, they're a little bit smarter. They're definitely smarter than us. Like, that's for sure. We don't want to selectively listen. If your child is telling you a story of what happened and then you pick up on a small detail and then bring it into, so really what you were saying is that, that there's going to be more tests tomorrow. So like, it's really important that you should be going to study. Like, the small little iota of the story that really wasn't as relevant. No, you can't, like that. Again, that's not listening. That is what I call agendizing. Like, that's on your agenda, which leads to another type of listening, which is word listening. It is not a good idea just to listen to the words. You have to listen to the experience, the expression, what the facial expression and, just the overall tone and intonation. Oftentimes with my patients, that's exactly what we work on. Like, you can't say it in a certain way and expect it to go like, positively when you said it so harshly. So similarly, if your child is saying something and you're missing the bigger picture because you're missing what they're really saying because of their message, no. That's not listening. And finally, self-centered listening. So what's self-centered listening? Self-centered listening is you hear what you want to hear towards your own agenda. So I can tell you right now, there's no teenager in the world that is going to want to tell you anything. If really every time you're going to twist it and be like, see, I told you shouldn't have been hanging out with so-and-so. Like, no, that doesn't help. I don't want it to promote your agenda. I wanted you to just listen, hear me out, and learn from what I'm telling you so that you can understand me better. So really, the concept of listening is so important for learning wise, right? And the last is sensitivity, right? So we really have to understand that our children, they don't have the same experience that we do, and that we have to show them that we understand this roller coaster that they're on. We have to show them that we believe in them and that there's a lot that they're going through that we can't understand. Yes, we can reflect back with them on things that like, oh yeah, this is similar to what I had in my life. Or, one of the questions that have come up a bunch of times has to do with eating. Like, my child doesn't like how much she weighs and she seems to have been gaining a lot of weight. Like, what do I do about that? So, if that is something that resonates with you, just to say like, no, it's going to be fine is not sensitive, but to really like understand and give that emotional support. Like, I hear you. And, and I appreciate that you're saying that, or it seems like there's that there was a struggle right now. Maybe we could, do you want my advice on it? And these are things that I've done, but I'll only share that if that's what you want. If not, I'm here. You want to just talk about it. I clearly see at the meals that this is something that's bothering you. And if they ask, to buy certain foods or, what could be done, and you're open to giving them suggestion about, like maybe we could, stock up the fridge on foods that you would feel comfortable with, whatever that might be. Or, I was about to join a gym, maybe they have room for, buy one, get one free type of thing. Or, maybe there's a class that we could do together, or, maybe we could, take some of those chores or some of that stuff that you have to do, and we can reconfigure time wise so that, you're able to, to be able to do extra exercise before the meal, or, within what's happening, or I'll wake you up early, any of those things, like that sensitivity, that shows that you care. Just being that person at the top of the mountain, not going to work. Being the person that is going to be the best friend, also not going to work, because they don't need you as a best friend. They don't want you as a best friend. They want you as what I said, firm, fair, and friendly. But towards that end, if it's just about the firm and the fair, and you don't get that huge piece, that sensitivity piece, then we're really missing out. And that helps. So I hope that tonight, that's my eggshells, and I hope that allowed you guys to pause and to think about how your eggshells can be combated with my eggshells. And thank you everyone who gave me questions in advance, because it really allowed for me to kind of conceptualize and process. And I hope that in the future, everyone will feel comfortable to ask questions. But I'm just glad that you guys tuned in, and please continue to ask me the questions. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Okay, bye guys, good night.